He's a Chevy guy, owns all Chevy dealerships, wanted to build a street rod, didn't want to build a 32 Ford because you can't have a Ford. And so it kind of started with, I want to build the coolest Chevy coupe that we can do. And so 9 years ago, we found 2 of them in Arkansas. And Greg is a guy that this was the 3rd car we started for him. And this is the 14th one to be finished. So we've been working on it for a long time, but they're all Chevys, only Chevys. That's all he does. And so there's a lot of progression that's happened in this car from day one. We started with, you can just look at technology with printing and machining and all those things that started then. And through lots of discussions and dreaming is kind of where we ended up today. So I will go through the exterior body mods for you, and then I'll go through the some of the details of the engine bay and stuff like that. So we obviously chopped the top. We lengthened the wheelbase. We wedge sectioned the car 3 inches at the grill, and then moved the rear axle center line back and raised the rear fenders. At the same time, we also put in the bead for to fill the roof of the top, and reshaped everything because the Chevys were incredibly not accurate at all. The car was 1.5 inches wider on the right side than the left side, and all of that stuff was changed, which then brought about the idea of, hey, let's change the shapes of the fenders, let's change the shapes of the beads, let's go through all of that stuff. The rear apron was hand fabricated along with the rear trunk lid, along with the quarter panels, along with the hood side, the hood, most of the fenders, most everything, as you can imagine, is reshaped or hand fabricated from scratch, or coach built, I guess you would say. So let's see, the hood side vents are mechanically actuated on the inside. So you would open the hood and you crank those, and we'll open those, and we'll have those open and closed all weekend so you can see both sides. That is the doors are machined. So the hood sides were shaped, then they were scanned, and then they were final scanned in bodywork to get the shape of the bodywork trajectory through there, so that it's not just flat doors, as you see the hood sides transition through there. The grill is made in the 5 pieces. The front windshield, we made it pop out so that it kind of has that. We were really afraid that it was going to make everyone think it was a 32 Ford, but the front window pops out, which was not stock for those cars. The rear window is completely reshaped so that it doesn't get super small, but we went to extenuating links to make sure that the car didn't end up as a 32 Ford, because it still needed to be a Chevy. So there was a lot of stuff that we would put it on and go, that looks like a Ford. And so, and it's hard because the 32 Ford, the 32 to 34 Ford is like the greatest looking car there is. And so it's really hard to follow those things through. So the wheels are one off. It's a drop front axle in the front and a solid rear axle in the rear. The frame rails are all hand fabricated from the outside plates to the inner structure. There was a design detail that was in the Chevys from the factory that looked like a dimple die. And so we kind of ran with that on the chassis to make it look like that, but we reshaped everything to fit the ride heights and for the front and the rear. So all that was done when we built the chassis. So there's an extenuating amount of work in the chassis to build the chassis to make it look stock. So the other thing we did is you'll see when it's up in the air that we machine the running board brackets to make them a design detail that matches the interior of the car. At the same time, I spent about 6 months trying to figure out how to make the rubber perfect, because you can buy sheets of rubber and then you can cut the rubber, but you're never going to get this line, let alone get it to follow the fender, let alone get it to terminate here, let alone I always wanted the body line to be painted the color of the car. I just thought it looked fancier. I don't know. So those running boards are then painted, which we painted them a few weeks ago from a scan of the tire, of a brand new tire rubber color. And then we messed with a whole bunch of flattening agents to get the one we liked, because those running boards are machined from aluminum to get the rubber look. So we went to extenuating circumstances to do all this crazy stuff to make it look stock. So I feel like that's gonna be my difficulty, is conveying how custom this is when there's like the oil pan, which we'll get to, is incredibly modified, even though it looks like we just painted it orange. It's not, because of the engine block that's in it. So you guys want to take the hood off? Let me get them to take the hood off. We've designed the car to be displayed with the hood off, because when the hood is open as the one piece, you can't see much in here, right, as you can see. So we've designed it to set up to do that. And so they'll take the hood off for me real quick. The whole display, our display is exactly this, in like spread out over 80 feet. So you'll be able to see all the different structures that we made. You can see the process of all the hood doors, the running boards, and the details they have from underneath. I got this idea, the rubber took me like 6 months to solve, and I solved it on my mountain bike climbing a hill one day, going, oh, that's how you get perfect rubber. I think yeah.
Yeah, I battled that one.
So we made the rear belly pan just to kind of close off the back of things. We went through a few renditions. The other intention in the car, which as we get through the interior, is I always like the idea of it being like a walk-through car. When you open the trunk, which these guys will open the trunk, I wanted to be able to see through the trunk and see the stuff. I didn't want it, there's no panels on there's no show car panels on this whole car. Like that doesn't say the name of the car on the stuff. It has original staggered bolt Corvette valve covers on it, because they're just perfect for that engine. The engine is a 350 engine. The thing is we took the engine block, and I found out that the sprint car guys, they will take an iron block engine and they will put it into a CNC machine, and they will lighten 60 pounds out of the engine for their sprint cars. That's a lot of weight. I didn't know they did that. So what you can do is you can tell them to take off certain things and leave other things. So I had them take off everything we didn't need, and then all the freeze plugs are screw-in freeze plugs and not the brass ones so it's one of those things that unless you know what you're looking at, the freeze plugs are like, oh, those are beautiful, until you realize that that's because it's a Brodex block and blah, 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 even though it's painted orange. Which then leads you to the one-piece oil pan gasket, one-piece seals in the front, and then the gasket gets different because the oil pan, one of them has the dipstick in the block, and the later model one has it in the pan. We're forgetting which way it goes, but this one has no dipstick because it just clutters things up. So, and you're never gonna burn through all the oil. So that was one of the things to overcome, was the pan gasket was incredibly difficult to make. And the oil pan is a combination of like 3 different pans to get it all to work, because of the late model and the early model. And I wanted the oil pan to look correct, which I'm sure all of you guys will appreciate that it's not, there's just that shape. Yeah. When you see a 327, there's just the shape. So then the cylinder heads, they have the camel hump bumps on the front of the trick flow cylinder heads, which is just one of those geeky things that nobody's gonna know unless you look at it and you're like, oh, it's got the bumps. Yeah, and so there's just an extenuating circumstance of all those things. Then it's got the Hilborn stack injection on top of it. There's it seems like thousands of hours to deburr it all, get it all nice and smooth, and make all that stuff perfect, just like the engine block, just like everything else. And then I wanted to make it where the stack injection had the race vibe, but yet it wasn't just a full race car. So we machined the tubes. Can you guys hear me or no? Okay. So we machined the tubes where they bolt onto the tops. These pieces bolt on from underneath to hold the little air filter screens. And so it's not just stacks. It's kind of I felt like it was refined racing. I don't know. It's kind of what we were thinking. So The radiator is complete. The tanks were machined top and bottom to get the shape we wanted. Then Ron Davis welded the top part of the machine and the lower part together to make the radiator itself. We mounted it all in rubber pieces because the intention of this car is I didn't want to just make this show car that has no real ability to ever be driven. Am I gonna lie to you and say that he's gonna drive it on a road tour? No, it's probably not gonna happen. But the intention is to drive the car, not just have this thing where it's
actually functional. Yeah, it won't shake itself apart.
I understand what I'm saying. That's probably a good way of saying. So it's got torsion bar suspension. It's got closeout panels on all the torsion bars that are chromed and have all this bitchin' stuff. It's got JRI shocks on it. It's got all those things on it to work with that are chromed and made to look original. These ones actually, we had to machine our own pieces because they don't sell them anymore, which I found that out at the very end.
It's funny that when we look at that car, the firewall is mirror finished black, and then it's got like a floating floor and stuff, and you get lost in the depth. Like you can't tell where the firewall is because it's a perfect mirror. And then I look at this, and I was getting the same effect, and then I realized, no, I'm actually seeing through to the gas tank.
Yeah.
It was like it's the opposite optical illusion. I thought I was looking at a reflection.
Way back when, like, wow, 20 years ago, I did a car called the Z28 Nova, and Nelson, we built it looks like a DZ Cross Ram 302, but it's actually a 406.
Yeah.
And I did the same thing. Because I'm from back east,
Yeah.
a lot of stock car dirt track racing. So we had, who was it that did it? They did heads for us. They look like 202 Camelback heads, but they're not.
Yeah.
They're for late model cheating is what they're for, bluntly. And I did a bunch of little stuff like that. Like, that's cool as shit.
Yeah.
All right, take us through your interior.
Yeah.
All right, so starting back here, we knew from day one, if you guys want to look up at the headliner real quick, I'll walk you through the interior to start with that. So this car was originally steel nailed to wood structure. And so I knew from the beginning I wanted to do this headliner combination where the structure of the car was dimple dyed to match the frame rails and went through the whole structure of the whole roof to carry it all the way through every panel. So in doing that, I knew that if I wanted it to be the walk-through look, that I had to have the X brace in the back to help hold the car steady because the structure on the outside is only going to do so much. So we wanted to make the X brace in the back a solid piece that was also structural to the stiffness of the interior to go with everything. So the floor was constructed in 2 panels to the only thing that runs through there is just the wiring because we knew that everything was going to be exposed because there's no carpet, there's none of those things. And so we had to have a place to route some of the plumbing and some of the stuff that's through there so that it's not in the awkward positions. So there's 2 layers. Okay. And if you,
Cool.
There's access panels here, and if you look up here behind the seat, you can see the access panels there that are billet. See those things? So you remove those and that allows you access to all the joints. So all that stuff was laid out from the very beginning to get everything together. So the top panel was plasma cut, the bottom panel was plasma cut, all the structure was put in so that we could then make machine the firewall because I've always loved those aluminum firewall cars. Then we machined the toe board so that I knew it could be a painted and bodywork piece. But the other thing is I machined the trans tunnel so that the switch piece that's in the middle, if you look at the back side, there's things on there you can't do by hand. I wanted people who knew what they were looking at to go, man, that thing is incredible. So you'll have to stick your head in there to see it. But you can see the ignition switch and everything is in between the seats. Oh, sorry. But everything is around that. And I wanted the shifter ring to be able to bolt to that to be one continuous piece when it's bodywork. So all that had to be let in there from the very beginning to be bolted into the car. And so then the discussion came of chrome bomber seats would be cool. But I don't think we're talented enough to make chrome, like seats that you can actually chrome that would be that good. And so the discussion was made of, what would it take to do this? Well, in SolidWorks, you can design half the seat, you can mirror it over, you can make the two. So we 3D printed one seat and put it in there to make sure that it was the right size. Because I didn't want to get the car done and you're like, oh man, this seat is too small or too big or whatever. And so we put it in the car and liked the shape of what we had and progressed forward to do that. So those are machined from, I believe, 6 pieces. There's a base piece, then each side is a half, and then the back has a splitter with a back piece in it. You can see some of it through the back of the car.
What are the window cranks and the handles?
All that is, we designed.
Chevy, I'm assuming. And
no, we made all that.
oh, you just made them? Wow.
So the problem we ran into as we got into the into the build process is we wanted to run manual windows. I didn't want to put power windows and I didn't want to do the levers that go up and down. So we wanted to put manual windows in it, even though you can maintain the look with a switch, I'm just not into faking it. And so, but we ran into the problem is that the door panel was going to require us, because of this linkage to come through here, that the door panel was going to have to be out here to clear the glass. So the discussion was made of, hey, well, let's make this part of the interior.
What is that?
This is the release. This is what actuates the handle.
Oh, I like that.
So we did that, and then it was trying to also carry the textures that we have in the floors into the doors as well. Yeah. So the handles were made, once again, following the dimple dies from the bottom of the car, following the dimple dies that we, at this point, had just gone bonkers with, of doing that. And so a few months ago, which really slowed down the build process for us, was we decided to Cerakote all the inlays of everything. So as you go through the car, you'll see it in the sill plates, you'll see it in here, you'll see it in the X's, you'll see it in the straps that hold the fuel tank down.
Nice contrast.
It adds a beautiful contrast to the car
Awesome contrast.
that we didn't see really coming.
No, great decision.
And so as we went through those things, we wound up doing that in the firewall.
Sure.
We wound up doing that in a lot of other places to get that stuff through everywhere.
That made an awesome impact. That looks awesome.
So the garnish moldings were machined so that we could put details in them that you could not put in there by hand. So I had been researching a way to do this for a while, of a way to do this, and this is a piece of channel rubber that goes through and terminates down, so you can slice it on the bottom side and you don't see the ends. Because I knew after we put all that effort into the rubber running boards, I couldn't fake this. And so I spent a bunch of time trying to think through how to get that to look right. A finished look.
Couldn't find a better paint.
I tried.
You went to a cheap guy.
Ah, he's all right.
Yeah, he's okay. So they're all connected together. So when you move one, they all move.
Yeah, I've made those before.
Yeah.
Our back
They suck, huh?
Yeah. If we handmade all the doors plus a backing plus a stamping to do so ours aren't smooth. So we wanted a stamped back, and then we hemmed the face, it goes on, and then made a linkage.
Yeah.
And then when you make your own doors, then you have to make your own holes.
And then you see guys like me cheat and machine it all.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. You're like, it has no soul. It has no soul. So
we actually added the no soul stuff. Has more soul than we did, because we added a little linear actuator that we made a cover, so you don't know it's there.
Yeah.
But you can operate them electronically. And it had it on a thermostat, so when the car keeps up there.
oh wow, that's nice.
Yeah.
So is there a rod inside actually?
No.
Or just
I didn't want the extra linkage to
Yeah.
do it.
No,
I think it looks. I'm
that
just gonna
looks
leave it
cool.
open. I'm just leave it open all the time.
Yeah. Cool.
I love that a lot.
Yeah. That's a pretty little part.
The
a lot of
choice
those.
to Cerakote the recess is good choice.
It's
Super
beautiful.
cool. Oh yeah.
But as you go through, you'll look underneath, and everything is that way. The running board braces, all the straps for the fuel tank, all the braces that for the fenders here, the transmission mount, the trailing arm link mount, everything.
I've done it.
Yeah, it's there's a ton.
Once you go down that hole, you have to start at the beginning.
It added
you have to do the
added
whole-
weeks to this project.
yeah.
It added
Oh, yeah.
weeks to it.
Um,
I wish we could have somehow made some of the other stuff easier, but yeah, it's getting the tape lines and everything in there because we Cerakoted with the polished inserts, and so the other thing we did is we machined all the fuel rails so they didn't look just like regular old fuel rails. We machined the air block in the bottom because we left the brass fittings to give it the old time look, but we obviously replaced all the rubber lines and went to the standard place, but made everything where the hoses came out cleaner than they were because I didn't want to hide a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's your theme with all this exposed stuff.
Yeah.
You can't then change it up.
Yeah, but the first conversion I did the same thing. So your little airbox looks like a power or the barrel valve.
Yeah.
That would have been a barrel valve, and those would have been the injectors that go to it. So it all makes sense when you look at it.
And so we made the thermostat housing so that we could run a regular thermostat in there and connect to the hose, and then connecting it from both sides instead of
That's neat.
connecting the the race car AN fittings that are on there.
I like the symmetry of that.
Yes. And then beautifully chromed NOS valve covers. The fuel rail goes up onto the firewall and then feeds into there. Let's see, the fan shroud is machined to go to the radiator, so it bolts directly to the radiator. The radiator is all, like I said, all rubber mounted for just so it doesn't tweak it, over. Everything's all. The alternator mount was made low so that you could see some of the engine and not have it up here and kind of hiding some of the things.
And it's getting a heater in the future, it looks like.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the inner fenders were set on there to have a flange that comes down in machines to set the front end on there squarely.
What am I looking at here?
That's supposed to be
something?
yeah, it's supposed to have coolant in it.
So is that a window or is it just
That's a
open?
window.
Oh, okay.
No,
I,
it's glass.
yeah.
And so I
couldn't
wanted
see
to-
a reflection. I was trying
Yeah.
to figure out if that was.
There's,
Okay. Yeah, that's
as
cool.
you know,
So
there's
check
probably
it.
3 more things we're gonna do tonight, and
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
so
All part of it.
Three.
I was-
Yeah.
I was trying to. Yeah. But my vision was to see the green. I told him the other day, I'm like, this car has green antifreeze, right? It has to be
Right.
green in there.
Yeah.
Like there's just something that I thought that was going to be
Oh, I
a
think we
neat,
can see the green.
a neat feature, a neat feature to put the green antifreeze in there.
Oh,
So,
that's cool. I like that.
I tried to make all the bezels where they're under clear plastic. So in the doors,
Did you
and
machine those? Or
that's all machined, so that it just has a factory look. It looks like something that could have been from you guys know what I mean.
Yep.
Yeah.
Taking a break.
Leftover
lunch,
amber food. That's what they give us.
Okay.
Still.
Buy them food and they're like, here's
Thank you.
what's left.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Wade,
Thank you.
badass.
How nice is Torsion
If you guys don't like it, I don't have anything left, just so you know. There's nothing left. Greg made these bracelets and said no excuses. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Greg, like talk about pressure.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's,
Torsion bar suspension is amazing.
Yeah.
it is.
So I'm like,
Yeah.
wow. There's a, yes.
There's only one way to make them that perfect.
Yeah.
Yes. But you probably just, yeah, it's just crazy. So,
Yeah, it's a hell of a car, man.
thank you.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I look forward to spending
And then
some
we
time
got-
crawling around and looking at all the
we got a
details.
lot
the display will have it up in the air with the driver's rear tire off. There's 4 mirrors underneath that are lighted. And you show all that. It shows the stance on this side, and then there's an L that goes under it, so you'll be able to see everything underneath. I didn't angle it or anything because I really want the stance.
Yeah.
I hate putting a car in the air.
Those days are over. We need to cars need to be displayed on the ground so you can see.